What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Crew podcast. My name is Josh Fan, and I am your host from Show Me Football. And of course, I am joined by, as always, Michael Darcy of KC Sports Report. And together, we bring you the Kingdom Crew podcast, which is going strong so far this 2023 NFL season. We've been pumping out episodes. We really wanted to get back in the podcast game. And it is quite the commitment trying to do this weekly, but I'd say we're doing pretty good so far, Michael. We've kept our commitment.
The only week that we missed was a week that I was quite literally dead. So I think that we've done a pretty good job of finding ways to schedule these kind of podcasts around our schedules. But yeah, I'm excited to get back and talk about it.
And we made up for it too with that episode earlier this week talking about the wide receivers. We basically just had an hour-long episode talking about the Chiefs receivers. I know a lot of people enjoyed that one, so appreciate y'all for watching and or listening. But today, Michael and I have a lot to talk about, including a preview for the Chiefs versus Vikings this week. So before any of that, we just kind of want to hit on some of the biggest headlines going around Chiefs Kingdom right now. I know there's a couple things that you wanted to get into, Michael, but we never did do like a post game or talked much about what happened with the Chiefs and Jets outside of like the receivers and stuff like that. But I know that game kind of ended on some controversy with the holding call on Sauce Gardner holding Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and that gave the Chiefs a first down and pretty much ended the game. But I never really asked you about that. So what are your thoughts on that holding penalty and all the hoopla surrounding it?
By the book, it was a penalty. By the book, that is a holding call. Now, I understand the people that are like, at that stage of the game, why are the refs blowing the whistle and stopping the game to make those kind of calls? Because it did end up resulting in a Chiefs win. But I think Travis Kelce said it on the New Heights podcast, and it made so much sense. He said that good teams never put themselves in the position to blame the refs for deciding the game. And the Chiefs were in the right spot at the right time. And so many people around the NFL get on the Chiefs specifically for getting all the calls. But the only reason that we talk about the Chiefs getting all the calls is because they're better than any other team at capitalizing in general. So, yeah, it appears the Chiefs get all the calls, but that's because they just capitalize on so many opportunities, and that's what great teams do. So, yeah, by the book, it was probably a hold, or no, it definitely was a holding call. Should it have been called? That's up for debate. It did stop MVS from running his route, but I could also see the Jets fans being like, "Hey, like it wasn't egregious." But I mean, again, the Jets would not have been in that position if Zach Wilson didn't fumble or they didn't get into a 17-0 hole. So you can always play this game, and people do play this game, and it's not a very fun game to play because at the end of the day, what happened. You had 4 quarters to find a way to win, and it came down in your mind to one play, but it never comes down to one play. So I think it's a whole lot of nothing.
Well, you did mention how on the New Heights podcast they talked about good teams don't put themselves in position to have the game come down to the refs, which that's perfectly said because right before that was the Zach Wilson fumble that gave the Chiefs the ball back and that whole drive ensued. So, that doesn't happen if Zach Wilson doesn't fumble the snap and turn the ball over. So that was pretty well said by, I think Jason Kelce was the one that said that. So, that means a lot coming from him because he obviously was involved in the Super Bowl that ended on a controversial holding penalty. And of course, the Chiefs are in the spotlight because, well, this is another big game on national television. 27 million people were watching, and it ends on a flag. Now, like, I agree with you. It was a penalty because if you're Sauce Gardner, if you're any cornerback, if you're guarding a receiver from the outside, you cannot reach across their chest and grab the inside shoulder. That is way too obvious. That's getting called most of the time. And also, we want to talk about officiating. A lot of people, I didn't see a lot of people talking about this, but right before that play, Mahomes ran for a first down and it got called back because of a Trey Smith holding, if I remember correctly, the play before. And this holding call that they called on Trey Smith, I thought was very soft. So why is no one talking about that? It's because they hate the Chiefs. I know why. I
They
know
hate us
why.
because they ain't us, Josh. It's the same thing every single year. We're gonna have a couple more games probably this year where the opposing team that ends up losing is gonna be like, oh, we got gypped because we didn't get this call in this situation. But at the end of the day, you didn't do enough in the other 3.5, 4 quarters of the game to win the game. So I think that Jets fans, especially after watching Zach Wilson play a pretty good game, felt like they played good enough to win, but they didn't play 4 good quarters. And the Chiefs maybe didn't play 4 good quarters either, but they played more good quarters than the Jets did.
Also, if we really want to get technical with all this, earlier in the game was the Juwan Taylor face mask, and the refs claimed that it happened in the end zone, which gave the Jets a safety and 2 extra points. That did not occur in the end zone. It was very obvious on the replay. So I'm kind of curious as to how they bent the rules to say that it occurred in the end zone because it didn't. So I mean, like we can argue, excuse me, we can argue calls all day.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the day, I've really tried to take officiating out of it. And sometimes officiating can be really bad. But I also think that um, it hasn't been that bad this year overall. And I think that the Chiefs have done a pretty good job of, like Jason Kelsey said, they don't put themselves in a position to have the game come down to a ref's decision.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Moving on though. So I know you wanted to talk about some of the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so Tyreek Hill, well, I think it was either yesterday or earlier today, something like that. He put out a podcast episode saying that he was talking about this game and how it came down to a controversial call, and he was like, honestly, like the Chiefs were saving the Super Bowl last year. Everybody knows that. I'm not. This isn't a direct quote, but I'm just kind of summarizing what he said. He's saying stuff like the Super Bowl last year, the Chiefs got lucky off the refs, and they got lucky off the refs again. Maybe that doesn't happen if Taylor Swift's not in the building. Kind of like poking fun, ruffling Chiefs fans' feathers. And before you say anything, I'll put in my 2 cents on this. If you go and watch the clip, it's a lot more lighthearted and a lot more casual than the quote makes it sound. It makes it sound like Tyreek is just taking cheap shots at the Chiefs, which I mean, like he still kind of was, but it was more of a because he mentioned Travis Kelsey right after, and he was like, "Oh, Kels, like come on the podcast, man. Like I miss you," or something like that. And it's like these guys are still friends. Like Tyreek Hill can say whatever he wants on camera or whatever while he's with the Dolphins, but he does miss being on the Chiefs, whether he admits it or not. He's still really good friends with Mahomes. He's really good friends with Kelsey. He has a ton of respect for Andy Reid. So I really don't think it's as bad as a lot of Chiefs fans are making it out to be and freaking out saying screw Tyreek Hill, no respect for the guy. It's like I've said it several times on this channel. I will always love and appreciate what Tyreek Hill did here, and I really don't care what he says because he was awesome when he was here. He's the best wide receiver in Chiefs history. I truly believe that. And he brought us a Super Bowl. So those are my thoughts on that. But what do you think?
I mean, Tyreek Hill says a lot of stuff all the time
Mm-hmm.
in general. It could be about the Chiefs, it could not be about the Chiefs. He just loves to talk. And I think that we've kind of discovered since he's left the Chiefs that he talks and he talks and he talks, but how much of what he actually says he believes or means, I think is a very low percentage. I could definitely see him, making the claim that the Chiefs got help in that Super Bowl because of the holding call. He said that just because he knows that Travis and Pat are going to think it's funny, and he thinks it's funny. But then you have Chiefs fans on Twitter that don't A, understand how to read sarcasm, and B, they just get mad over the smallest stuff. And I couldn't agree with what you said more. Like Tyreek Hill is the best wide receiver the Chiefs have ever had. And what he did while he was in Kansas City is something that we've never seen any wide receiver in a Chiefs uniform do. So for that reason, I'm always going to love Tyreek Hill. But I think there's still a large portion of Chiefs fans that really take what he says with a lot of sincerity. And I think Tyreek Hill's trolling a lot of the time. I
Yeah.
don't think that's really an exception for this thing. Seemingly every month or two, we have something new to talk about. I just don't really think it's legit. I think he's trolling his buddies on social media, knowing that it's an inside joke between them, but it's not for the thousands of other people that are reading it.
Yeah, Tyreek really is just trying to drum up engagement because someone did point out on Twitter, like he has over 1 million YouTube subscribers, but his podcast that he actually uploads to YouTube gets like 10,000 views an episode. Like very, very low viewer to subscriber ratio when you look at his videos. So, um, yeah, he just does it to drum up engagement, man. And none of it people should be taking that seriously.
He's just trying to boost numbers, but um, yeah, I can't blame him. He's been like this for a long time, and I'll let him talk. I think it's funny. At this point, it's just like, what is he going to come up with next?
Yeah, for sure. And we're only a few weeks away, or sorry, a few weeks away from uh, the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill meeting back up in Germany. The NFL really kind of botched that, though.
Yeah,
Not having Tyreek return to Arrowhead. Like, I get wanting to have that game in Germany, but it just feels like such a missed opportunity.
if you were going to put a game in Germany, I would have put like Chiefs Bills or Chiefs Bengals. That
Hmm.
game, I mean, just the rivalry between both of those teams, that's a game that I think would do so well internationally and like spark love for the game over there. I know they have love for football in Germany, but I think that those teams specifically going at it, I mean, that would be must watch television.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely would. So we're done with the Tyreek Hill stuff. Another little headline coming out of this week: Aaron Rodgers took a shot at Travis Kelsey on the Pat McAfee show. I guess they were talking to him or asking him about like Taylor Swift or something along those lines, and Aaron Rodgers referred to him as Mr. Pfizer because of his commercial. Now we're not here to get into what you think about the vaccine and stuff like that, but it's just kind of funny because, as you mentioned to me before we started recording, Aaron Rodgers plays under the Johnson family, or they own Johnson and Johnson, who also makes one of the few vaccines for the COVID-19 virus. And you know, if you're get like if you're gonna represent a vaccine company, it might as well be Pfizer and not Johnson Johnson, the one that was like screwing up a bunch of people and like no one wanted that one. Like that was the worst vaccine you could get out of the three.
Yeah, first of all, it's funny that Aaron Rodgers took a shot at Travis Kelsey because he's taking no shots. Um, but no, it's honestly funny. I don't understand how people get so charged up on either side. Like there was a lot of people that were getting on Travis Kelsey for doing that Pfizer commercial. In my mind, dog, get your money. I'm sure Pfizer gave him
Yeah.
a bag and a half. And the people that there's like a really large percentage of people out there that have a disdain for Aaron Rodgers. I don't I don't have any hate towards Aaron Rodgers. I think maybe some of the stuff that he does with psychedelics in a dark room, maybe it's a little unorthodox, but like I don't understand where that hatred for Aaron Rodgers comes from. People on both sides of the aisle, I think, kind of miss the main point with both of these issues. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. There's definitely people that, and this is what I hate. There's definitely people on Twitter and just in the world in general that will use that Mr. Pfizer joke comment, which Travis Kelsey talked about at a press conference. He
Hmm.
thought it was funny. They're using that as like a main political talking point, and that's kind of like, okay, man, you're really fun at parties. You know what I mean? Like that's just so unnecessary, and I think it's a lighthearted joke between two people um, who have an immense amount of respect for each other. They both play the sport of football at an extremely high level. I think people on both sides of the political spectrum kind of need to calm down.
Yeah, people just they get way too into it, and I saw people like genuinely angry at Aaron Rodgers calling Travis Kelsey Mr. Pfizer, which you mentioned. Travis Kelsey took it like a champ, and he poked fun at the fact that he is getting checks from Johnson and Johnson essentially, and representing that organization. I don't hate Aaron Rodgers now. I dislike him for other reasons. I just dislike him because I feel like he's super arrogant for a guy that I feel like has underperformed.
And that's
Um,
valid.
in his career. Yeah, like that's the reason. And like just this whole like him going to the Jets and kind of acting like he was going to walk in and win a championship with this team, and him along with the rest of the Jets just kind of felt like a team that was acting like they had already won the whole thing. That's why I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I really don't care about the off-field stuff. I just feel like he's super arrogant and he's quite honestly overrated.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I get all the on-field criticism of Aaron Rodgers. He's definitely underperformed. If you look at his like NFC Championship game record, not something that you would be proud of. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting to see, people on both sides freak out about something that's not a big deal. At the end of the day, it's all about money. Both these guys are all about money, and they got paid, what they probably should have gotten paid, and I don't have a problem with that. But I know there's people out there that just, like I said, are not fun at parties and would, be upset about that kind of stuff.
It's just crazy. Like people care way too much. And like not to like reveal what side of the political spectrum I'm on, but it's one side that usually always has a problem with Aaron Rodgers and what he's saying. And or like how do I put this? Basically what I'm trying to say is with Aaron Rodgers specifically, like anytime he makes just the slightest comment that's politically charged, like people just go after him. And I feel like
Yeah.
when it's the other way around, it's not really that um I was trying to think of an example, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. Because like we can be honest here, like Aaron Rodgers is definitely the conservative type, and it seems like the left kind of just anything he says, like they're crazy, dude. Like just and both sides are crazy. Trust me.
Yeah.
Like both sides have their downfalls, but man, I feel like if like you hear Travis Kelsey saying stuff about or being, just pro-vax and stuff like that, and being in the Pfizer commercial, I don't really see as much of the conservative side going, "Oh man, screw Travis Kelsey, he's a traitor. How could he sell out to fight?" Like, I don't really. I mean, I'm sure it's out there. Like, I'm sure you can find examples, but like, I don't see that nearly as much as I see people complaining about Mr. Rogers calling Travis Kelsey Mr. Pfizer.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there. Like I've seen it, but it's just weird. I just hate
Yeah.
selective outrage. I really just do.
Yep.
At the end of the day, okay, guys, this is a life lesson for whoever's listening to this podcast. You can only have so much effort put into something. So why would you care about something that doesn't involve you
Mhm.
and is so like non-important in the grand scheme of things? Like if you're gonna pick things to be upset about, that is so I don't even think that cracks the top 7,000 things that I would be concerned about.
It also makes me laugh how people act shocked that others have opinions that differ from theirs. Like just absolutely shocked that not everyone is a mindless sheep that follows whatever they think is right or wrong in their head.
Yeah, that's the world in 2023, but it is kind of crazy to see like everything kind of come together and like having Travis Kelsey doing the Pfizer commercial and then him playing Aaron Rodgers and him making I don't know. I think Pat McAfee handled it really well. I think he just like
Mhm.
I think he enjoys it because he knows like,
I'm
oh, this is gonna bang.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm kind of surprised why he still lets Rogers on the show because I feel like it kind of brings more harm to his brand than anything. I feel like even Pat McAfee like can't really control Aaron Rodgers sometimes, even though he does a really good job like being neutral. But it does create a lot of engagement for his show.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all about numbers. But it's kind of funny because the whole Travis Kelsey, you cannot avoid talking about him nowadays. I kind of want to talk
Yeah,
about the Taylor Swift drama and him getting on his podcast and kind of telling the NFL what we all believe that they need to dial it back with the Taylor Swift coverage. Josh, what
yeah.
were your thoughts on that?
I knew as soon as we headed into that Jets game that the camera was going to be on her
Oh yeah,
all night, and they were just going to keep bringing her up. And then I know the NFL on their Twitter page changed their header to Taylor Swift. On their Instagram, they put something in their bio about the Chiefs being 2-0 with Taylor Swift in the house. And it's like, it is overkill. And I know some people are going to try to say, "Oh, let the NFL have their fun," and it's not harming anybody. But it's just, and I said this to you on our last episode, but it's like if if Taylor Swift wasn't dating Travis Kelsey, we would not be hearing about it nearly as much. She would just be another celebrity at the game because there's a lot of celebrities at a lot of football games. Like even at the Chiefs games, we constantly get Eric Stone Street and Paul Rudd and just other like celebrities just coming to the game and hanging out. And you don't see the camera constantly on them, but it's because she's dating Travis Kelsey, and it's this kind of collision of two worlds. The pop culture world and then the sports world, Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift together. And it's just, yeah, they do need to dial it back just a little bit because it's kind of making the broadcast unbearable. But I mean, I do get why they're trying to embrace it to an extent because, I mean, they're, Chiefs Jets got 27 million viewers, which I think is the most for Sunday Night Football this year. And again, like we all know why. It's the Swifties invading football.
Yeah. And the dirty side of this whole situation is that the NFL is making so much money off of this relationship that, of course, they're going to push this. Of course, they're going to advertise that Taylor Swift is, out here at the games and with Travis Kelsey. And it makes sense because they're making so much money through the viewership and all the jersey sales now. So, yeah, it makes sense. But at the same time, it almost just kind of feels cheap in a certain way. Like you're going so far overboard that you can just clearly see that they're doing this to make money. And just that's the part that I don't like. I also just don't like the fact that Taylor Swift has overshadowed the game on the field. At least it appears like it has because the broadcasters are constantly talking about it. Like, I think, was it Chris Collinsworth that's like, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey are a perfect relationship. And then he segues into like their relationship. It's like, oh my gosh, like we can go without that. And there was some guy, I think it was Tom Grossi, who he does Packers content.
Yeah.
He counted how many times they panned to Taylor Swift in the audience, in the crowd. It was like 7 times over the broadcast. That's excessive. That's overkill. And that's not even mentioning the amount of times during the broadcast they talked about her. So, yeah, it's becoming overkill. And I think Travis politely asked him to kind of tone it down. Did you see the NFL responded to that podcast though?
Yeah, they defended themselves, saying like, "Hey, let us do our thing." And had Travis Kelsey done more against the New York Jets, he had like 6 catches for 60 yards, whatever, decent game. But had he had like 10 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown, like, you know how many more times they would have shown Taylor Swift and her reaction?
Yeah, the better Travis Kelsey performs, the more we will see Taylor Swift. I just thought about that. So, yeah, in a game where Travis Kelsey was just
double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah, like in a game where Travis Kelsey was mediocre, we still saw Taylor Swift a bunch. If Travis Kelsey has one of those games like he did last year against the Raiders at Arrowhead, where he had 4 touchdowns, I don't know if my brain can take
God
it.
help us all.
Yeah, it would be an overload. It would be an overload.
Yeah, well, I think that wraps up the Taylor Swift talk. We've talked about her enough on this podcast. I'm sure it'll come up again at some point. There'll be some other story, and
Especially when somebody else made her famous, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But let's get into this Chiefs versus Vikings preview. So the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend are taking on the Minnesota Vikings at Minnesota. Chiefs are 3-1. Vikings are 1-3. And we talked a few weeks back about how this is a very favorable stretch of the Chiefs' schedule, and a lot of these teams look a lot worse than maybe people thought at the beginning of the season. Like even the Jets last week, like we thought they were going to have Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they didn't. And even though the Chiefs barely escaped New York with a win, they still won. But the Vikings are another team that's been kind of a disappointment so far this year. And you look at what they've done so far this year. They lost to the Buccaneers in week 1. That was embarrassing. Lost to the Eagles. Couldn't stop turning the ball over in that game. Lost to the Chargers and barely beat the Panthers, who are winless so far this year. And that was last week. I kind of feel similar to this game that I do with the Chicago Bears and the New York Jets. This should be a pretty comfortable win. Like the Vikings just aren't good. Now, you still got to take them seriously just because their offense can be a little explosive. They have Justin Jefferson, who is maybe the best wide receiver in the league. But, I mean, initial thoughts heading into this matchup, I really don't know why the Chiefs wouldn't win this game.
Yeah, the Chiefs should be heavily favored to win this game. They probably are. I haven't checked the odds. But I will say that for the Vikings being 1-3, I think they are a better 1-3 team than their record shows, just because their offense is really good. Kirk Cousins has balled out this year. He's made some mistakes, but I think overall, there was a couple games that he had like 350 and 4 touchdowns, and they still lost. So
Mhm.
I think that just shows you how bad their defense is. But
Mhm.
their offense is good enough to kind of keep you in games. And the Chiefs' defense has been really good this year. And I think that if they can continue the trend of holding teams to under 20 points against this Vikings offense with, I mean, Justin Jefferson, like you said, the best wide receiver in football, Jordan Addison. I would be really impressed if against this offense, the defense could continue to do the same level of dominance.
Yeah, so looking at the Vikings offense versus the Chiefs defense kind of had their first rough performance last week against New York, but even then they still held them to 20 points, which I know Zach Wilson is their starting quarterback, and people are like, oh my gosh, you gave up 20 to Zach Wilson. But anytime you hold any NFL team to just 20 points, I feel like that's pretty solid. Now, with the Vikings in particular, like I said, they have an explosive offense. Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are a very good duo. They also got KJ Osborne, who I like. He's very solid as a wide receiver 3. But I looked at the offensive rankings for this year, and the Minnesota Vikings are in the upper echelon. But like they're there with Detroit, who the Chiefs faced earlier this year. Like they're right behind Detroit in total offense. And we held Detroit to just 14 points on opening night. And so I feel like the defense is going to have a bounce back game of sorts. Like not like they played bad against the Jets, but it was kind of a little bit less dominant than we've seen them this year. And the pass rush was kind of lackluster. I expect the pass rush to get back after it and harass Kirk Cousins in this game. And I just like I look at their receiver core with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, like it does scare you. It should scare you, but this Chiefs secondary has just been so good that I'm not really that concerned. I know the Jets were able to pass the ball a little bit on this defense, but again, lack of pass rush I think is more to blame, and also that was more of a linebacker matchup. Or running the Jets running backs on the Chiefs linebackers. They were kind of getting our linebackers in coverage, which that'll happen sometimes, and they were able to exploit that matchup. But as far as our corners and safeties, I'm very confident in these guys going up against the Vikings wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I love our defense's odds. They've been good all year. I don't think the Vikings is going to be an exception. Like I said, their offense is good, and I don't expect us to completely shut them out. But the Vikings, I mean, they're 1-3. They've always been a question mark. I mean, the Chiefs should be fine defensively in this game. I don't necessarily know if I want to completely transition to the offense yet, but my eyes are going to be on the offense in this game. I want to see them perform at a high level, convert on third and fourth downs, and mainly I want to watch these wide receivers. If the wide receivers can have a good game to kind of get something going, I'm going to be all eyes on the offense because the offense has been our biggest complaint this year.
Yeah, well, we can talk about the offense. I don't really mind. So this is actually a favorable matchup for the Chiefs because the Vikings pass defense actually ranks dead last in the NFL so far this year. Their secondary just has not been very good. And if there's a game for the Chiefs wide receivers to have a bounce back performance, it's against Minnesota. And it feels like, this is what the second or third time we've said that this year. Oh, the Chiefs wide receivers can have a bounce back performance in this game. We're just kind of waiting to see them emerge. And they were able to against the Bears a little bit. But we talked about how that game isn't really all that impressive to us and how the Bears are terrible. And they didn't even have a defensive coordinator for that game. We need to see it more consistently from these Chiefs receivers. So, them having a good performance against the Vikings, if that does happen, is great and all, but I'm going to need to see it again after that. And then if they can't even perform against the Vikings, then we really have problems.
Yeah, especially some of the issues that we've talked about, like the lack of separation and catching the football. Like we got to see some marginal improvements from week to week, and we have not done that. So, I mean, the Vikings aren't as bad as the Bears, but the Vikings aren't as good as the Jets. So, I would like to see our offense come out and perform. If they do that, I mean, our defense is going to give us a great chance to win by themselves. I don't think that we are even in question of whether or not we're going to win this game. But we want to see the Chiefs win this game, not by a blowout. I mean, a blowout would be nice, don't get me wrong. But I think we're more just looking at seeing how individual wide receivers perform because hopefully, if they can have a good game, it'll carry on the rest of the season.
Yeah, for sure. Like you're trying to build these guys' confidence and you get somebody going like Rasheed Rice or Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore. Mainly those guys, I feel like, are the ones that most Chiefs fans want to see emerge. Um, we talked about Justin Ross a little bit and how he's not even really getting an opportunity in these games. You have to wonder when they're going to try him out because the other receivers aren't really helping you all that much. But at the same time, you need to shorten the rotation a little bit because you also talked about how they're just rotating guys in and out so much, just trying to see who works that no one's ever really able to get into a rhythm.
Yeah, like if you're going to have a game, make it a Kadarius Toney game or a Sky Moore game where he gets 13 targets. Put them all in Sky Moore's hands and just see what he can do. Because guess what? If he gets 13 targets and has like 2-3 catches, I think you have your answer. But right now, it's just you're not giving guys enough of a sample size to truly find out what they are. I think that goes back to Andy Reid wanting to spread the wealth, and I get that. But you're going to have to get guys' confidence up. And Kadarius Toney, he's been in the dumpster this year. And Kadarius Toney is not a guy that should be down there. So get Kadarius Toney involved. Get him some catches early. And don't abandon him after he has 2 or 3 catches because that's what they did against I can't remember who it was, but they gave him like 2 receptions early and then never went back to him. Like we just need to see this offense pick one wide receiver or one target and not go to him every single play, but give him the majority of the targets.
Yeah, and the wide receivers are worth the conversation, but at what point are we going to get a big Travis Kelsey game? It feels like we're way overdue for that to happen. I don't know if Taylor Swift's going to be in the building for this one, but um, if she's not, it'd be interesting to see how Travis Kelsey performs when she's not there. Because even though Kelsey hasn't been bad when she is there, we haven't gotten our traditional big Kelsey game yet this year. We're 4 games in, and he has less than 100 yards. He's really off to a slow start. And again, the Vikings' pass defense is not good whatsoever. So maybe a big Travis Kelsey game. And if you're getting a big Travis Kelsey game, then that allows things to open up for the other wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say this yet, but you almost got to wonder about Travis Kelsey's 1,000-yard streak.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we're starting to get to the point where it's like, all right, man, you're not really. And I don't think this is a Travis Kelsey problem. I think that, I mean, he's been banged up. He's probably not 100% right now, and he's just been playing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at a certain point, it's like you're not running out of games to hit the 1,000-yard mark. But I definitely think that you're going to have to get something going soon. And just for this offense, if Travis Kelsey is back to getting 90 to 100 yards a game, it's going to open so much more stuff up for this offense because we're kind of needing him to be our number one wide receiver right now when no one else is stepping up. But again, I don't blame him for not, producing because I think he's kind of injured, and I also don't know how much the Chiefs have utilized him properly.
Well, yeah, it's just unfair when you're increasing his responsibility and increasing his workload as his age also increases. That's not, you can't do that. And we talked about that and how it was a concern heading into this year. And Travis Kelsey talked about how it's getting really hard on his body, um, being, you know, producing the way he does um, at this age, and just these seasons are getting harder on his body. You should have brought someone in, a veteran, to kind of take the load off of him a little bit, a reliable target, because as we've seen so far, too many times, too many stretches in these games, Patrick Mahomes is standing back there looking, nobody's open. And, I think we maybe saw a little bit of the consequences of that against the Jets when Mahomes was back there and was just throwing uncharacteristic interceptions. Because if you actually go back and look at the interceptions too, it's not even like the guys were wide open. I mean, it was just Patrick Mahomes was trying to fit a ball in there and either underthrew them or just got baited into a bad throw because the guy was already covered. You're starting to see Mahomes press just a little bit to keep this offense going the way everyone expects it to be going. And it's just not working, man. It doesn't work when your receivers aren't getting open.
Yeah, the wide receivers could really alleviate a lot of pressure if they could do their job. Because, I mean, Patrick Mahomes can't do it all. He can put the ball His ball placement's fantastic, but even he's going to have some mistakes. And when your receivers are getting so little separation, that Mahomes has to fit that ball in this tight a window every single time, eventually you're just going to have some, not good throws and some mishaps. But I'm really going to be interested to see if these wide receivers can answer the call, because I'm not discrediting what they did against the Bears, because you beat the brakes off a team. But the
Yeah.
Chicago Bears had not won a game until Thursday, till last night, in like almost a year. So the Minnesota Vikings are just a different opponent, and yeah, they might not be a good team either, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if this Chiefs wide receiver group had, had a majority. Well, let's say like 300-ish yards, like three guys at like 100 yards apiece. Like that would be so awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll see that, but if there was a wide receiver, Michael, that you were to predict having a big game in this one, who would you go with? I'm curious.
Ooh. Two guys stick out, and it is Kadarius Toney and Rashee Rice. I could see them. I could see this being a Kadarius Toney game.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I could see it. I'm kind of leaning with Rasheed Rice. I think he could have a big game. It's like he is one of the few receivers that it seems like is getting open on occasion, but when he is, catching the ball has been a problem. And eventually, you want him to kind of kill these wide or these drop issues. And I know someone replied to me on Twitter, or I saw someone on Twitter saying that the drops issues will go away, and it's like, will it though? Because this is kind of who he was in college too. I mean, the drops weren't as bad in college as they have been since he's been in the NFL. I think he leads the league in drop rate or something like that. Like it's pretty crazy. But I was like, is this really, or could this just be who he is? He just drops the ball. And, someone replied to me and they're like, nah, he'll figure it out. And it's like, well, at some point he needs to, because that was a couple weeks ago. And, we're almost a quarter of the way through the season now, Michael. So it's time for these guys to start putting up.
Also, I don't know how much you could figure out catching the football. That's something you can either do or you can't do. I mean, you can improve at it, but
Yeah.
figure. He knows he's dropping the football. Are you going to catch the football? Like that. There's only so much you could figure out with catching the football.
Yeah. It's like either you can catch or you can't.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really concerned about Rasheed Rice is like there's a lot of guys that when they come into the league, if they are already dropping passes, it's usually not something that changes. Like if a guy comes in the league dropping passes, drops are typically always going to be an issue throughout his career. Do I think Rasheed Rice is going to have as high of a drop rate now for the entirety of his career? No, but you can kind of tell just off the bat that Rasheed Rice is going to be a guy that drops some big balls, and that sucks. Like I wish Brett Veach didn't draft a receiver that has problems catching the ball, which is the most basic fundamental aspect of the position.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of his problem with drop balls comes back to the fact that he hasn't had a super big problem with it in the NFL, but he was a jump ball guy in college, and I equate a jump ball receiver to somebody who's not getting a ton of separation, and I don't think he's getting a ton of separation in the pros. So if you're not getting a ton of separation, it's going to make it harder to catch the football, and that might be one of the reasons why he's having problems, holding it on to it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I hope he can clean it up. But like even take like Nelson Aguilar for an example. Uh, Became a solid player for like the Raiders and the Patriots there for a minute. But when he was on the Eagles, I mean, Eagles fans wanted his head on a platter because he could never catch. He would always drop passes. And like even with the Raiders and the Patriots, he still dropped some passes. It wasn't quite as frequent, I don't think. But, he was always known as a guy that has trouble catching the ball. And usually that label sticks with you once you already have it.
Yeah, but hopefully he turns it around, because he's got a lot of talent. He really like when you give him the ball. I mean, he's got electrifying speed, and he's just so shifty. But it's almost
Yeah.
like, can you hold on to the football?
Yeah. I mean, the concerns with the wide receivers are valid, but we've talked enough about them. Uh, I feel like in this game, we have confidence that the Chiefs offense can put up some points just because of how bad the Vikings defense is. We're not going to learn anything really about this offense in this game. I wouldn't think. You're just hoping that they don't go out there and piss the bed even against the Vikings, because then that would be, again, a really bad sign. But we didn't really talk about like Isaiah Pacheco in the running game because he really broke out against the New York Jets. And I feel like that might be a sign for things to come for Isaiah Pacheco. Maybe the Chiefs really dominate running the ball in this game once again. So I'm excited to see that.
Me too. Like Pacheco had a fantastic game on Sunday Night Football. I think it's gonna be hard to replicate that just because he was so good. But I think that the Chiefs' offensive game plan has got to be to mix in the run because against Jacksonville on like 15 dropbacks, they decided to run the ball twice. You can't do that against this Vikings defense. And I understand that their pass defense is bad, and that's why I think they have to throw the ball a lot to take advantage of that. But if you drop back to throw on every single attempt, you're just putting so much pressure on your offensive line, first of all, but it's also just predictable. So mix in the
Yeah.
run a little bit. And Pacheco, I mean, he's getting like 4.5 yards a carry. So let him do that and run. If you're going to run the ball, run on like first down. Get like say 4 or 5 yards. You have a 2nd and 5. You get 2 yards on second down. Then it's 3rd and short, and then you're completely different on offense because you can go for it in those situations, and you're not getting in so many 3rd and long situations. And Josh, I remember you talking about this. We don't have the same amount of confidence on 3rd and long or 2nd and
Yeah.
long as we did in years prior.
Yeah, it's like once this offense kind of gets into a bind or gets backed up, whether it's due to penalties or like the sack, it just you don't feel as great about them converting as you did. Like before 3rd and long just was so like Patrick Mahomes was insanely efficient on 3rd and long. It's just like you never really had to worry somehow they were going to convert it. Hasn't really been the case this year. Anytime they're backed up like 3rd and long, they've really struggled.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe why the overall offense has kind of taken a little bit of a hit because I mean, when it was 3rd and 25, we were like, "Oh, okay, like we've got a good chance of converting this." But if it was 3rd and short last year, it was like, "Oh, this is going to be tough." But
Yeah, well, and then like 3rd and short's a problem too. I
yeah,
mean,
well,
it's
third,
been better. It's been
yeah,
better the past few weeks, but
it's still a problem. But now you don't have the confidence on 3rd and long that you did in years prior. Part of that might be the wide receivers not getting open and Travis Kelsey being double covered. And just the offensive line because some of the times they get in those 3rd and long situations it's because the offensive line has a critical holding penalty or a false
yeah,
start and we're backing up,
yeah.
so it's we haven't looked crisp on these 3rd downs and there's a lot to blame for that, but I would like to see us get better at that in this game.
Well, that's another thing is penalties, man. Like the offensive line needs to clean up the penalties in this, more specifically, Juwan Taylor, because he's been the main culprit, and it's kind of getting hard to defend with him. I do think they were picking on him with some of these BS penalties, but like uh, the face mask against New York, like that's on Jawan Taylor. Like you can't do that. And I mean, it's a little bit of bad luck just because sometimes your hand can kind of end up in a player's face mask, even if you weren't meaning to do that. But still, Jawan Taylor has already had more penalties this year than any other season in his career, and we're in week 4. Like that's not good.
And we
We're in
paid
week 5, but through 4 weeks, most
Yeah,
penalties that he's ever had in his career.
and we paid him a lot of money to do this. We
Yeah.
could have kept Andrew Wiley. I mean, shoot,
I mean,
Andrew
look, the penalties might be bad. I'm good on Andrew Wiley though. I've seen some. I've seen a lot of Commanders fans like wanting Andrew Wiley gone. Like they have no idea why they brought him in.
See, but I would argue like the amount of money that we gave Jawan Taylor, the drop off from Wiley to Taylor isn't that crazy.
Well, I mean, no, well, the pass blocking has been much better with Juwan Taylor than it ever was with Andrew Wiley. I'm pretty sure Andrew Wiley gave up the most pressures of any right tackle last year. But like, I kind of get what you're saying because the penalties have been that bad. But as far as actually playing the right tackle position, give me Juwan Taylor. It's not close.
That's fair. I don't know. Like I didn't think Wiley was that bad last year. I really didn't. I
No,
thought
I
he
mean
was.
he did fine. He did fine in his role and playing a role that maybe he should have never been expected to play, but the Chiefs made that signing for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough though because they gave him a lot of money, and while he's played the position in terms of pass blocking, he's done all right. It's like, man, what you're doing in giving up penalties is almost like negating that.
Yeah, because like the penalties are still a huge deal. Don't get me wrong, and that's why again I understand why you kind of say that, but the penalties at some point could cost you a game. Like even against the Bears, Jawan Taylor got I don't even remember what it was for, if it was holding or illegal formation, but he he had a penalty which not only brought back an MVS touchdown, but got Patrick Mahomes injured the play after when he tweaked his ankle against the Bears. So penalties got to stop until something really bad happens or before something really bad happens.
Yeah, I think that's like you said. We're not going to really learn anything from this offense against this Vikings team this week, unless they're
Unless
like
they're really
really
bad.
bad. Yeah, unless they're
Yeah.
really bad. In which case, okay, we've learned something. But I think if we can look at the individual performances of the wide receivers and the offensive line, and let's just say the offensive line's perfect, they give up no penalties, and the wide receivers are getting open and they're catching the football, and Travis Kelce has a good game, and Mahomes doesn't underthrow guys, and he looks good because Mahomes didn't look good in that Sunday Night Football game. If we can see that stuff, I don't care what the final score is, as long as we are seeing improvement in those aspects. That's the kind of stuff that will carry forward the rest of the season. And that's what you need to be a great football team is improve on those things. Because I remember last year we were talking about how the Chiefs had such a big turnover problem. And like, how are they going to fix this? They never really ended up fixing it. And they just somehow found a way to get over it, I guess. But
Mhm.
they also, when they got towards the playoffs, they really did clean it up a little bit. But we also weren't making these costly, mistakes and penalties, and so that's going to have to get cleaned up because that's just signs of an undisciplined football team. But
Yeah.
I think if we can see them correct those things this week, it'll be not completely issue solved, but it'll be a good first step in solving the problem.
Yeah, I agree. I thinking about the turnovers too, it's something that's kind of been an issue the past few years with the Chiefs as turnovers. 2021, it was really bad too. I know they had like the most turnovers in a season since Andy Reid has been the head coach, and that was only like halfway through the season in 2021. But that's kind of a different topic. Hopefully, they don't have any turnover issues in this game. But do you have any other concerns, any other thoughts, any other notes on the defense in this game? Because we haven't talked a ton about them.
Do we know if Nick Bolton's going to play?
He's questionable. I have the injury report in front of me. I was going to kind of jump into that next, but he's questionable. Sounds like it could be a game time decision.
Josh, I'm not going to lie. If Nick Bolton's on the fence, don't play him. You
Yeah.
don't need to play him. The Chiefs defense has looked fine without it. And that's not me saying we can win without Nick Bolton, anything substantial. But Nick Bolton's the kind of guy that if you can give another week to get more healthy, do that. Against the Vikings, I would be a fan in letting him get more rest. But honestly, I don't really have too much to say. I think our pass rush will be much better, which, by the way, I was thinking about this the other day. We get Amenahu back in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real close. First portion of the season really flew by, and then you get him back, and then I'm really excited to see what this pass rush can do. Uh, I have a couple notes on the pass rush, but real quick on Nick Bolton. I said during the Jets game that this defense misses Nick Bolton a little bit, and I had a bunch of people like quoting me saying, "Oh, and it's the typical like people that are always hating on Nick Bolton, talking about how he sucks in coverage, blah blah blah," and I really get sick of that. But they were saying, Nick Bolton doesn't do anything well that would help this Chiefs defense tonight. Like our linebackers are getting picked on in coverage. Well, Nick Bolton's no better in coverage than our other linebackers. And I'm not saying he is, but people are downplaying the impact Nick Bolton has as the green dot and, seeing those pre-snap adjustments, making sure that everyone's in the right spot. I think they missed that just a little bit against the Jets, which is why you maybe saw a little bit of a step back from this defense against them.
Yeah, I don't get the hate of Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton is like playing at an all-pro level, so I don't get that. But I think if you could give him a little bit of extra time to rest, I would suggest it. But if he plays and he's good enough to go, let him play because I mean your defense is better with Nick Bolton on the football field, and anybody that tells you otherwise doesn't know ball. So Nick Bolton,
I
if he can
mean,
play,
did you see Nick Bolton in the Super Bowl? He played maybe the best game of his life. And I know everyone thinks of like the two fumbles. Of course, one of them didn't count, but they just think of that. But like Nick Bolton was getting like several huge stops in that Super Bowl on third down.
yeah, he's really good. He's really good. I mean, he's been good for the past 2 seasons. So I love the fact that he's really taken that leap. And there was that one, I can't remember when Nick Bolton got drafted. We were talking about if Willie Gay or Nick Bolton's going to be a better linebacker in the future, and a lot of people picked Willie Gay. I think Nick Bolton is not like insanely better, but I think there is a difference between Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. They play different roles and serve different purposes, but Nick Bolton is playing at an all-pro level where I think, Willie Gay is probably only playing like maybe a Pro Bowl level.
If the Chiefs had to choose who they give an extension to, Willie Gay or Nick Bolton, I promise you they would pick Nick Bolton. And it's for plenty of reasons because I think they've kind of shown that they've chosen Drew Tranquil over Willie Gay. Drew Tranquil is closer to what Willie Gay does, and they brought in Drew Tranquil for a reason because Willie Gay has not been the coverage linebacker that they hoped he would have become at this point, and Nick Bolton serves a much greater purpose, being the green dot. Willie Gay will never be the green dot because I don't think he understands the defense as well as Nick Bolton. He doesn't process as fast as Nick Bolton does. So Nick Bolton's the more valuable linebacker to this team.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But for this Vikings game, like I think the pass rush will be good. Expect Chris Jones to have a very big impact up front. Don't have any concerns on the secondary. I would probably put Snead on Justin Jefferson. I think he'll listen. You're not going to shut down Justin Jefferson, but I think that Snead can at least minimize the damage. And
Mm-hmm.
overall, I feel confident in our secondary, and I feel confident in the entire defense against this Vikings offense.
Well, that's good to hear. I feel pretty much the same. I did want to say about the pass rush, though, since they were a little disappointing against the Jets. Chris Jones was really the only guy to do anything. George Karlaftis, I did see a tweet about him before we started recording about him having like 20 pressures this year already and being on pace for like an insane amount of pressures. But you would really like to see him start turning some of these pressures into sacks. And Seth Walder of ESPN started putting out his first charts of the year for pass rush win rate times double team rate. And George Karlaftis, once again, is kind of in that bottom left corner, which means he's being double teamed not so often, and he's not really winning that much. His pass rush win rate is not super high, which basically indicates that he usually his sacks, whenever he does get them, come after like 4 seconds. That's kind of what we were used to last year. You need someone to step up, being kind of the fastball. Mike Deanna was on the chart too, but his pass rush win rate was among the lowest of them all. But surprisingly, he's been double teamed a lot this year, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Mike Dana doesn't strike you as a guy that would be getting all these double teams, but that's where you really need Charles Menahue to come back and be the veteran pass rusher that can take this pass rush up a level. Because right now it feels like they're good but not great, but it feels like they could be great once they get a Menahue back. And if they didn't have a Menahue, you almost would have wanted them to sniff around on like Randy Gregory, who the Broncos got rid of, or someone like that. But Charles Menahue's on the horizon, so just got to get through a couple more weeks, and then I'll really start to judge this pass rush after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, sounds good. So do you have anything else on this game? If so, I think we're good to close this one out.
No, I think that we've covered basically everything. These games are tough to talk about because we're at that stretch in the Chiefs season where we're not playing the best competition. I think our mindset is go in, handle business, win the game. You're not going to learn a ton if you win by a lot, but you can see improvements in the offensive line, the wide receivers, and if Mahomes plays better, you can see individual improvements, and that will be a good sign. But we're not learning. If this offense is good enough to beat like the Buffalo Bills or the Dolphins, or even I don't even want to say the Bengals because they suck now. But I don't think we're going to learn anything like that in this game, but we can still see individual improvement.
For sure. Just try to go 1-0 each week until the real competition starts. Really, the next huge game the Chiefs play will be the Dolphins in Germany. They have some divisional matchups coming up that I'm not really concerned about, but we'll cross the bridge when we get there. So we'll go ahead and end it with prediction. So, Michael, what is your score prediction for Chiefs versus Vikings on Sunday?
I haven't really thought about it. There was a time where I projected that the Chiefs could drop like 40 against a team. I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was the Bears. I might have said it was the Bears.
I think it was the Bears.
I definitely think against the Vikings they will be in the 30s. I'm gonna say 31-17. I think the Chiefs defense is gonna answer the call, really stop that Vikings offense. The Vikings might score like a garbage time touchdown, and the Chiefs might score a lot early and just kind of coast. But I think 31-17 is how I'm feeling. The Chiefs will win, and they'll be 4-1 on the season.
I'm not too far off. I got the Chiefs 30-20. I think, it's a double-digit win. I think the Vikings will get theirs just because their offense does pose a little bit of a threat, but the defense overall will do a pretty good job. And then I think the Chiefs score 30 in this one. How they get there will be determined, and whether or not the receivers have a good performance will be determined, because even against the Jets, the receivers were terrible, and they were Mahomes' courtesy slide away from scoring 30 against the Jets, even with how bad the offense was. So I think they put up 30 easily in this one, and they win by double digits.
Couldn't agree more.
So there you guys have it. That will go ahead and wrap up this episode of the Kingdom Crew podcast. Make sure you guys leave us your score predictions down in the comments, what you think of this game. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And, of course, Michael, you want to go ahead and plug everything you got?
Sure, I'll be quick. You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report, Instagram and Twitter at the Michael Darcy. Check out my stuff on the Bleacher Report mobile app, but it's also on the YouTube channel. So KC Sports Report on YouTube is the one-stop shop, so just go there. And Josh, I just noticed it. We're both wearing our own merch, so I kind of give shout out to both of us for repping our own brands. But it's a great thing to see.
Which you guys can do the same if you want to. I mean, we both have our stores linked to our channels, so you can go ahead and check that out. But yeah, we'll go ahead and sign off. So appreciate y'all listening, watching, whatever platform you may be on. And we'll see you in the next one. Go Chiefs.